So tech is pretty cool, right? Right? I mean, we can order whatever we want with Alexa. We can have professional photos and videos taken with just our iPhones. We can get any kind of food delivered to our doorstep with a couple clicks. It's pretty cool. And we can definitely attribute a lot of today's tech to various youngsters and their very innovative minds, no question. But you know what's uncool about tech, or more so really the tech industry at large, is somewhere along the way, older employees started getting a little bit overlooked and undervalued. Essentially, they started getting to be perceived as less adaptable to those new technologies, as less capable of learning things quickly. And this has led to a good bit of marginalization. It's really a huge bummer because these people, many of them are super qualified, really incredibly gifted employees, and we're adding so much to their organizations. And all of it's pretty crazy. I mean, let's think about the fact that Steve Jobs himself, the vaunted tech god that he is, he actually introduced the iPhone to the world at 52. So what I do know is that my perception on this actually happens to be reality. Older people are, in fact, underrepresented in the tech industry. Given we know this is an actual thing, and I've been wondering why we haven't addressed it. And my sense is that maybe we haven't, since it's an inconvenient truth, right? Like, much like having to actually plan for your inevitable demise and set up a will, we don't want to think about the fact we're going to be getting older, right? Because we live in this super ageist society. It's been inculcated in us since essentially birth that getting older is not good. And we will spend any number of dollars to try and avoid it. That's my gut. But guys, this is the one thing that we all have in common. Honestly, we're all getting older every moment that we happen to continue breathing air, which is a goal for most of us, right? So ultimately, my sense is we should work right now to make sure that our attitudes and our systems aren't going to actually be hurting our future selves, right? And by the way, if you don't think it's going to happen to you because you're so young, I got news for you. One day you're going to wake up and be like, holy crap, I'm 40. What the hell just happened? Or holy crap, I'm 50. And you have absolutely no idea how this happened to you. All right. So today we're going to cover a little bit of my story, the reason I got into this mess to begin with, and why this particular topic really matters actually for all of us. We're going to cover some of the facts that I've actually found so far, and then we're going to get into what my ultimate mission and goal is with the creation of It Gets Late Early. So I started to get curious about this topic really pretty much as soon as I entered the tech world. It was immediately apparent to me that there were not very many older people, first and foremost, and those that I did see were mostly concentrated at the top of the organization, right? At the top of the career ladder. And I have to say that this actually was true of both VC-backed startups that I worked for, as well as the more mature companies where I had a role. So when I observed this, I immediately was asking myself, what happens to everyone, right? The higher up you get in an organization, right, the fewer positions. I'm no math major, but it's like, all right, there are not that many positions up there. And so I started to wonder, do we have sort of an up or out culture in this sort of a tech organization? Is this something where I need to be worried about the ability to continue to work in this space if I don't actually keep on moving up that chain of command? So it was something that was, even though I was at the time pretty dang young in my early 20s, I started thinking about it. But it was immediately something that stuck in my head from the very get-go as something that I needed to actually be a little bit concerned about and needed to be ambitious to overcome, right? I started to worry about my own self, right? I started to think, okay, if I don't actually achieve some particular level by a specific age, which by the way, I consider to be pretty young, probably 40 or under, I thought, gosh, am I even going to be able to stay in this industry? And time went on and I was able to enjoy a really great career with a lot of wonderful companies, some not so wonderful companies, and a very huge variety, right? I was able to work at these mature market leaders as well as at these very, very small VC-backed startups. So I was able to build what I think of as a great tech career, and I'm really happy to have been able to achieve that. But what was really interesting was over the course of time, I suddenly started to realize that I was actually one of the oldest people around. And I really felt it when I was at one of the later startups in my career. That when I had a friend who was, let's call him for sure Gen Z, right, early 20s, out of college. He was my buddy, and he started, I hope affectionately referring to me as Dino. And I was 37 when I was given this nickname, so that was a little bit grim and pretty stark reminder of exactly how young this industry really is. That was a wake-up call. Wow, that happened quickly. It got late early, right? So when the tech bloodbath started back in late summer 2022, and I was one of the first casualties of a RIF, reduction in force, at my past company, I kind of started to think about this because I had time, wasn't working. And I started thinking about, what's my path look like? What's the future going to hold for me? Why not take a moment and start having conversations with people in the tech world to understand whether they've experienced this, whether they harbor these same fears, or whether this is something that I'm just kind of making up, right? And I wanted to figure out, was I gaslighting myself with this? And turns out these conversations that I had over the course of this period were super eye-opening. And what they did underscore to me is that, no, I am far from alone. Many, many people, when asked, will tell me that they're extremely concerned about this particular topic. I set out to look into what stats are available, what research says about this, and what I found only confirmed my suspicions. All right, so first and foremost, I want to tell you, this is a real thing. Even the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has said in their diversity in high tech report that age is an underrepresented factor in the tech industry and that it needs to be studied more. That is essentially a verbatim quote from that document. And ultimately, you can actually find some tech CEOs who occasionally in the past have gone on the record to describe their preference for younger talent, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, actually, because it hides this, it's a little bit more nefarious that way. A lot of tech CEOs are smarter than to actually say that out loud. But it's a real thing that some major tech leaders think. Mark Zuckerberg, I'm talking to you. Also of note, the tech workforce is markedly younger in the US than across all industries. So I have seen statistics ranging from the average tech worker is 29 to the average tech worker is up to, say, 37 or so. And that the average employee of a company across all industries in the US is something like 43, right? So even at some of the bigger companies that you would think of, like Amazon or the FANG companies, if you will, the ex-FANG, because now Meta, right? Thanks, Facebook, you messed it up. So, but even within the ranks of Facebook, Apple, Amazon, like Microsoft, these bigger tech companies, even those, the tech workforce is markedly younger than across all US industry. This is not merely relegated to the confines of the VC-backed, very small startup world. Let's just throw it out there. That's what the data says, which concerned me, given that I thought to myself, over the course of time, as my career continues and I get older, perhaps all I need to do is just target these larger companies, the Oracles, the Microsofts, the IBMs, so on and so forth, where I could undoubtedly find a home. Unfortunately, what I found out is that even at some of these huge companies where you would expect they might have a wider range of talent, where they might actually skew a bit older, you'll find some problems. And these problems, obviously a lot of them aren't public, but some of them are. A few years back, there was an expose done about the IBM lawsuits because of age discrimination, wherein some of their even top executives were found in email actually discussing that they wanted to replace their older workers with millennials. Not great, not smart. But honestly, thank God they wrote it, right? Most people, you'd probably just say it in the hallways in a hushed tone, but they actually put it in writing, which meant that they were the target of a massive suit. So it's a real thing, even at the companies where you would think you might be safer, right? Also worth mentioning that the demographics of the United States and frankly the world are changing, right? So right now you have a lot of younger people at the bottom of that triangle, and it's actually about to invert. Right? So we're going to have a much older population by and large. And so we necessarily have to start changing the way in which we view older workers so that they can actually fill all the jobs that we're going to need filled. This is important work. And we got to start with ourselves internally. All right, so why am I having this conversation? Why am I going out on this limb that could potentially be a little dicey for me personally? Frankly, I think it is too important not to do it. Ultimately, my mission with It Gets Late Early is to ensure that people of all ages have access to tech careers as long as they want or need to work. I also really want to validate people who have been fearing this or people who've actually experienced this in their careers and tell them they're not alone. They're not making it up. This is real. No more gaslighting, right? This is legit. Ultimately, the need is to reframe the value of experience. It needs a whole reset. It needs some personal branding. Older does not mean worse. It's really critically important that we start thinking of people with experience in the workplace in tech as a good thing. People have been around the block. People can show you what not to do. People can show you how to get from A to B faster because they've already done it, right? I have always viewed my elders with reverence. I've always thought of them as more interesting and insightful as myself. I'm not saying age necessarily equals sage, but oftentimes you can learn a lot from people who've come before you. They have life experience. They have professional experience. They get it. They've been there. And frankly, almost all of them, they want to help you. I'm also no dummy. I want to figure out how we can quantify the value of experience, because the way to make waves and the way to make change is with hard facts and figures. That is how people operate, especially in the tech world, ones and zeros, etc. So it is incumbent upon us to figure out how we can potentially quantify the value of experience for an organization. My goal is to showcase how if you don't employ older, experienced workers in tech, you actually don't create as much shareholder value. Because let's face it, guys, the only thing these companies care about is creating shareholder value, right? And it is my firm belief that an age-diverse team produces better outcomes, more quality work, and ultimately more revenue than homogenous teams, as is borne out in the variety of different studies that have been showcased over the last few years as DEI has become a daily initiative at a variety of tech companies. My goal, ultimately, is to make sure that age inclusivity is a huge part of every diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative out there. This is the one thing we all have in common, right? And this impacts all of us. And let's make sure we see it coming. Let's not have it just hit us out of nowhere. Let's get ahead of it. Let's make these moves now so that everything is better for us over time. So It Gets Late Early is ultimately a platform to be a community of people who are experienced tech talent, who want to have long-lasting, fulfilling, fantastic careers for as long as they want or need to be in the tech industry. And I believe that tech employers will benefit greatly from keeping these types of employees employed at their companies. And in fact, that they're doing themselves a disservice by not doing so. So this show is going to be a place to explore this topic. It's going to be a place where we can learn from experts who understand this subject. We're going to hear from our peers. We're going to hear from industry leaders. We're going to share a lot. And we are going to get to the bottom of why this is the case and how we can change it. This is not a place where we're just going to sit here and complain. We are actually going to take steps to make it better, because I can go complain. I can go complain to my friends, right? I have complained to my friends. I want to do more than that. This starts with us. This starts with us internally. We have to learn how to reframe our own really, really absurd views about aging, right? We have to take away that wiring that has been instilled in us from our society over time that is so pervasive, right? It's not going to be easy. This has been deeply wired in our brains. It's not our faults, especially women. Women have been told it is a mortal sin to age and that we are used goods after 35. And it's frankly disgusting. And I got news. I'm 40 and I am not done yet. I am not done yet. I will not be pushed to the sidelines, and you shouldn't be either. I want us to work on taking aging from a liability to an asset. And I want us to do that societally, and I certainly want to see us do that in the tech industry.